Hello, everybody, and today we are talking about the last Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles episode of the Monster Arc. This episode's called Monsters Among Us. And I gotta say, it's a pretty good finale to the monster era of Tmnt, the Halloweenish special. So it's basically where the Turtles, Renette, have returned home, but things have gotten worse as the monsters have invaded New York and are all over. Everyone has been infected, and the Turtles must do whatever it takes to turn everyone back, including Raphael, who is still a vampire. But he starts one of the creepier scenes in this episode is where Raph, when he's a vampire, he yells that the Savanti and Dracula are gonna take over the world, and he starts laughing maniacally as it happens. But then the guys are all ambushed by vampire-like creatures. And they do bump into April and Casey, who are still our vampires. But the Turtles manage to go to the lair, where they're going to try to find a cure. But things take a turn when Dracula and Savanti sort of have a disagreement about what to do next for their goals. Because Savanti just wants to turn the whole world into a monster wasteland, but Dracula wants to turn his vision of the world into a society of vampires. But it's interrupted by Casey and April, who have revealed the location of where where the Turtles and Renette are. They are in the sewer. But while they're in the sewer, they're trying to do their best, but they are ambushed by all the monsters: April, Casey, Frankenstein, and Raph, who has the sector. And by the way, it's now a quest for Savanti to get the sector of Renette. But it leads to a big brawl between all the characters, but unfortunately, Donnie is bitten by April after getting attacked by her. But the Turtles are bummed by this because he's the brains, obviously, and then he has to find a way to cure them. But it turns out the only way they can cure everybody is if they kill Dracula. But the Turtles, Renette, all managed to escape, but unfortunately, Raph was able to get his hands on the sector. But what happens is Mikey ends up actually but I forgot to mention, Raph got freed because he was chained up in Mikey's room, but he hypnotizes Mikey into freeing him. But Mikey also ends up having a moment with Frankenstein where he's trying to convince him to turn to the good side, but he's not convinced at first. But once they escape, they end up going into the deep sewers where they find an abandoned hospital, and they strap Donnie to the thing, and he is starting to slowly turn, and eventually he does turn into a vampire, and it looks creepy, of course. But that's where Savanti and Dracula are having their conflicts, where they're going to plot their next move once they do have the sector. But because Dracula wants to use the sector, he is unable to use it because he doesn't have the knowledge to use it, and even Savanti calls him dumb for it. But what happens is eventually things do turn up where the Turtles end up battling Savanti, but they are going through series of time where Frankenstein ends up betraying Savanti and Dracula, and he ends up grabbing the sector and sort of cracking it, but it ends up leading all the Turtles going through various random moments of time. They end up back in New England in the 1700s. They end up going to ancient Egypt. They go to they end up also going to the time where they encountered the Foot Clan. I thought that was cool, but Leo's like, come on, man, after the Foot Clan flees. I think it's the Hamato clan, actually. But once Frankenstein betrays Dracula, things do take a turn when when Mikey ends up getting this staff thing from that they tried to use on the various, like on April and Casey and Donnie, because of they've been turned into Dracula. But Mikey ends up throwing it into Dracula. It's brutal. You weren't expecting Mikey to do it, but he stabs Dracula through the chest, and the way he dies, he like all his flesh comes off his body and he turns into a skeleton and explodes. And because of this, he ends up turning Raphael and Donnie back to normal, because Dracula's now dead. And it kind of reminds me of how in Indiana Jones, where they opened the Ark of the Covenants and all the bad guys all turn into like melting faces. If you know what I'm talking about. Reminds me of that. But Dracula's finally destroyed, and Savanti's like, well, he's gone. He was a jerk anyway. But what happens next is Renette sneaks up behind Savanti and punches him, knocking him out, throwing him back into the Stone Age. And yeah, he gets eaten by a dinosaur. He's back where he started, but Renette returns all the turtles back home. April and Casey are back to normal, and the day is saved. There is no longer a monster plague, since the turtles realize they can't go back in time and change everything. Even before, when they came back home, they ended up going to the moment where they were sent back in time by Renette. But I think they also stopped the mummy as well. And I'm sorry if I'm skipping things, but the werewolf guy from a few episodes ago, he ends up turning back and he wants to go back to his wife. He doesn't want to be in the 21st century. But Renette is going to take him home, and Frankenstein's wondering what he's going to do next. But Renette decides to take him to the future. And Renette ends up saying goodbye. She even has a moment to meet April and Casey, and they're like, whoa, this is cool. But Renette has a final kiss with Mikey, which was nice. And she says she'll see them in the future. So who knows what that means, even though this is the last time we see Renette. But the day is saved. The turtles decide to go trick-or-treating. And that's the episode. So this was definitely a fun arc for sure. It was a lot better than I expected, because I originally did not really remember these episodes too fondly. But it was nice. The writers were kind of just having fun with like old monster themed villains back in like the day where they'd make those kind of movies back then. If you're like nostalgic for those kinds of movies, then you're probably going to like these episodes. It's like a good episode to watch on Halloween. But this is the last time we see Renette and Savanti Romero. So, so Renette, I wish she was in the show more. She was definitely a cute couple with Mikey. Savanti, I liked the concept of the villain. We even learned a little bit about his backstory in the episode, where he says he was mutated by the Time Scepter people. But overall, I wish the characters were explored more. And they're more in like the Mirage Tmnt comics. They're even in the 2003 show. When we review that, we'll probably get to that version of the characters, which follows the Mirage story. So that should be fun. But overall, this was definitely a decent arc for sure. I probably give it a 7 out of 10 overall. But the last arc we are reviewing, we are returning to the crossover with the 80s Turtles. So that should be fun. We got 3 more episodes. I'm super pumped. So anyway, thanks for watching, and Turtle